6 books, over 800,000 words, one saga that changed science fiction and fantasy for good. Frank Herbert's Dune. How does one break apart such a saga? I've decided to do it chapter by chapter. Join me as we wander through the desert. This is Dunecast. Be forewarned, fellow traveler. Frank Herbert encouraged independent thought in his writing. The great irony is, his works are revered as sources of wisdom, just like the false prophets he depicts. In your travels, do not take Frank's word nor my interpretation as gospel. One element of Dune's legacy is its incompleteness. Frank never lived to finish the 7th and final book. However, the fandom often debates which book to treat as the true ending. Some opine that the original classic said it all. Others prefer Children of Dune, the third of the initially intended Dune trilogy. I myself am partial to Book 4, God Emperor of Dune, as the climax to all of the series' themes. There are entire books, including a finale by Frank's son, Brian Herbert, and Kevin J. Anderson, which the fandom completely ignore. A case is commonly made that the final chapter of Book 6, Chapter House Dune, finishes things with enough food for thought that a definite ending would ruin it. This malleable approach to interpretation is a testament to the open-ended nature of the text. Perhaps Dune wasn't meant to provide all the answers. Maybe it just asks the right questions. Why do we fall for charismatic leaders who commit atrocities? How do those leaders justify genocide to themselves alone at night? Which is better, hard times creating hard people, or discovering solutions that soften the next generation? Are hero figures good or bad for statecraft? What are the pros and cons of belief in God, the ultimate hero? Is God to be loved, feared, or somewhere in between? How can religion be politicized, turning believers into pawns? Most crucially, how do our toils change our environment? What are the ecological consequences of our politics? These are just a few of the central questions posed by Frank Herbert in the Duneverse. I'll do my best to give you a solid interpretation and to unpack the worldview embedded in the books. Feel free to disagree with my analysis and some of Frank's proposed answers. He frequently challenged himself by presenting opposing viewpoints in his books to emphasize gray areas. Frank was a fan of discourse. It would be an insult to his memory if we elevated him to godhead. Frank dedicates his first book to, quote, people whose labors go beyond ideas into the realm of real materials, end quote. He calls his work an effort at prediction, while also dedicating it to dry land ecologists. This immediately cues us into his preoccupations. To Frank, all human endeavors, religion, engineering, infrastructure, politics, war, statecraft, are a part of the ecosystem. We have ideas, then put them into action. These actions create a spider web of cause and effect, which is the essence of ecology. Each biome is shaped by the happenings in that biome, and the biomes in turn affect each other. A planet is a microcosm of the universe at large, ever-shifting oneness. Since the first singularity, stardust has collided with stardust, creating as it destroys. But we are stardust made self-aware, the universe observing itself, a link in the ecological chain that can conceive of ecology. Before we take action and change our universe, we have ideas. Ideas are quantum possibilities. Before any idea is put into action, there are infinite possible realities it could create. Frank's first idea was a boy pretending to sleep, becoming aware of plans laid for his future. A beginning is the time for taking the most delicate care that the balances are correct. Epigraph, Dune Chapter 1. Chapter 1 follows young Paul Atreides, son of Duke Leto II and his concubine Lady Jessica. Paul is a mentat in training, a human supercomputer capable of lightning-fast calculations and expanded data storage. This is a necessity for all royal houses after the Butlerian Jihad, a war that purged all manufactured computers and artificial intelligence. Paul is the heir to House Atreides of the Imperium and constantly trains under War Master Gurney Halleck, Sword Master Duncan Idaho, House Mentat Thufir Hawat, House Medic Dr. Wellington Yue, and his mother Jessica, who teaches him witchcraft. More on that later. They live on a watery planet named Caladan, but preparations have been made to move them to a desert planet. This desert planet's imperial name is Arrakis, but the indigenous culture calls it Dune. Paul's imagination is captured by this planet. Tonight, he lies awake eavesdropping on a strange guest having a heated discussion with his mom. This is Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam of the Bene Gesserit. The Bene Gesserit are a sisterhood of witches who use political and religious rhetoric to manipulate powerful families and cultures throughout the cosmos. The Bene Gesserit selective breeding program controls bloodlines deemed important. Sisters serve as truth-sayers for royal families, as well as concubines to bear children for influential patriarchs. They do this so that one day, a messianic figure called the Kwisatz Haderach will be born. That is, a male who can use the witch's powers of prescient future sight and the voice, which uses measured tones and sharp human awareness to effectively control people's minds. One Bene Gesserit power is to change one's own body chemistry and choose the sex of the babies they bear royal families. The sisterhood intended for House Atreides to bear a daughter, but Lady Jessica, a sister of the Bene Gesserit, and Duke Leto's concubine, bore the Duke a son in Paul. Bene Gesserit sisters are discouraged from falling in love with their assignments, but Jessica loved Leto so much that she willingly defied the sisterhood to give him the male heir he desired. As a result, she may have given birth to a Messiah a generation too early. Now, Mother Mohiam is on Caladan to see if Paul could be the Kwisatz Haderach. In a now famous scene, Mohiam puts Paul through the grueling test of the Gom Jabbar. He inserts his hand into a box that manipulates sensory receptors to inflict increasing amounts of pain. She holds at his neck the Gom Jabbar, a poison needle strong enough to inflict instant death. She will kill him with it if he tries to remove his hand from the box. Paul uses the Bene Gesserit Litany Against Fear, a commonly quoted meditation, to summon the will to endure. He fights the pain coursing from his hand, even keeping it in the box after Mother Mohiam tells him to remove it. According to her, he has set record time. When Paul has finished the Gom Jabbar test, Mother Mohiam calls Lady Jessica into the room. They discuss the Bene Gesserit plans to engineer a Messiah. Paul feels discomfort when exposed to the inner workings of the sisterhood. This reveals his innocence in the calculated reality of the Imperium. It turns out that his life of training, weapons and combat instruction, military strategy schooling, mentat training, his mother's Bene Gesserit regimen, were all imparted to him as preparation. Mohiam reveals that the last step to creating the Kwisatz Haderach is to expose him to the truth-sayer drug. This is a raw extract derived from a substance called spice melange. On the desert planet Dune, giant worms roam the sand. As part of their biological process, they they produce a substance called spice. When ingested, spice opens the mind to quantum reality, making the consumer aware of every potential outcome of every potential action. These are interpreted as visions. Technically, they result from the brain's heightened activity after ingesting the drug. But for certain people, like the Bene Gesserit witches, or space navigators born in tanks of spice extract, spice creates the ability to virtually see the future. It also turns the user's eyes blue. Spice permeates the air and sand of Dune. The Fremen, the native people of Dune's wild desert, have distinctive blue eyes and occasionally experience limited flashes of visions during spice orgies. Where spice melange would normally enhance a being's consciousness or make them more spiritual, it would permanently enhance a male of Paul's intense training in terrifying ways. The raw spice extract from a worm takes the form of the Truthsayer drug. Women are able to transmute the drug in their bodies, surviving as full-powered Bene Gesserit sisters. Once Paul takes this drug, there is no going back. It will either make him more powerful than any being in history, or it will kill him. Many men have tried the drug, so many, but none has succeeded. They tried and failed? All of them? Oh no, she shook her head. They tried and died. I know that's a lot to digest. Normally, the summarizing won't run so long, but this chapter does a lot of legwork to build Dune's universe, so there's a lot to cover. This brings me to my first point. Frank Herbert uses a short, simple 20-page story to do a lot of things at once. On its surface, not a lot happens in this plot. A kid wakes up, gets tested for pain tolerance, and learns a few secrets about why he was born. In the process, Frank finds natural moments for world building. Many of these moments are suspended in time due to large introspective paragraphs. The Dune saga is written in the third-person omniscient perspective. This means the narrator knows the thoughts and feelings of every character. If it serves a thematic or plot-related purpose, Frank Herbert can enter the mind of Mohiam for a paragraph or two, then go back to Paul's perspective, and then Jessica's for a couple of lines. While this chapter mainly hews to Paul's POV, it occasionally uses Mohiam's to convey her innermost thoughts about this peculiar boy. Instantly, we know she's not only curious about him, she fears him a little. This provides a well-rounded ensemble scene full of dramatic irony. This method of narration may take a couple of chapters to get used to, but it allows Dune to set itself apart. At Frank's discretion, we hear at least a bit from each character's mental monologue, and Dune characters think a lot. If one were to cut the introspection out of Dune, the word count would probably be reduced by half. Dialogue scenes that might take half a page can run for 5 pages due to the introspective third-person omniscient writing style. This serves to put the reader in the mind of the Kwisatz Haderach, who can mentally stretch time to perform complex min-tat calculations in an instant, or use Bene Gesserit awareness to read every social cue about a person to seemingly read their mind. In this way, Frank Herbert's Dune is a tale uniquely told via prose. Even the epigraphs serve that purpose. Each chapter opens with a quote from a primary or second-hand historical writing in the Duneverse. This first one quotes a character unseen in the body of the chapter, Princess Irulan. Irulan's book, Manual of Muad'Dib, confirms that Paul, who we infer is later named Muad'Dib, becomes a figure of historical significance. She says, "Dune is forever his place." We know Paul is moving toward an environment that physically creates spice melange, which Mohiam directly tells us will activate Paul's Kwisatz Haderach powers. It is as though our consciousness, like the Kwisatz Haderach, has already transcended time and space. We experience this chapter as though it has already happened. It's even told in past tense. Yet we move forward through it moment to moment, word for word, knowing a fuzzy outline of the outcome. As we eventually find out, prescience works much the same way. Aside from the themes embedded in Frank's writing style, the content of this chapter reveals the heart of the Dune saga. He crafts an entire mythology and universe to test the limits of human survival in the face of hardship. Mother Mohayim creates a dichotomy between animal and human when she begins the Gom Jabbar test. Quote, "You've heard of animals chewing off a leg to escape a trap. There's an animal kind of trick. A human would remain in the trap, endure the pain, feigning death that he might kill the trapper and remove a threat to his kind." End quote. This is earlier reflected in Paul's Bene Gesserit meditations. If a human being can master their senses, it can avoid the unfocused mechanism of consciousness to be conscious by choice. Animal consciousness does not extend beyond the given moment. The human requires consciousness by choice. Consciousness by choice could be called by another name: discipline. The famous Bene Gesserit litany against fear begins, "I must not fear." Fear is the mind killer. Fear is depicted as an inhibitor from full potential. Fear would cause Mohayim's theoretical animal to hurt itself in order to escape, but the human who masters fear can kill its captor. In the litany, Frank emphasizes that once fear is allowed to wash over us, we are left intact and ready to face that which once intimidated us. To him, crisis and observation are truth. Frank poses that willpower and awareness are the traits that make us special links in the universal ecology. Crucial to these traits is our ability to think. Thinking is emphasized throughout the chapter. The mythic Kwisatz Haderach, the messiah figure of the Duneverse, derives all of his power from his ability to think and perceive reality. This is hinted as a trait in our main protagonist throughout the chapter. From Paul calming himself in bed with a meditation exercise, to his use of the litany to face the Gom Jabbar, Paul overcomes his animal instincts when he can think. His quick mentat mind uses the Bene Gesserit aphorisms like tools to guide these thoughts. Schools of thought create entire cultures in Dune. The worth of such cultures is measured in their ability to inspire thought and resulting action. Throughout the chapter, Paul calls upon the Bene Gesserit school of thought for rhetoric like a religious man might call upon God in prayer. By the end, he is exposed to the cynical realities of the Bene Gesserit as an institution. Their use of eugenics disgusts him. As he comes more and more out of the shock of the test, Mohayim's words abruptly lose their special sharpness for Paul. While we don't see it yet, this telegraphs a deconstruction of his faith before he can be reconstructed as Muad'Dib, the Kwisatz Haderach. He's already viewing Mohayim, the ultimate authority figure of the Bene Gesserit, as a mere mortal whom he disapproves. Paul's coming of age begins with knowledge, and with it, a more informed ability to act. His actions remain a question mark at the end of the chapter. We don't know what he'll do. All we know is that he has gotten some answers surrounding his terrible purpose, an unknown force that overwhelms him at times, and that history remembers him by a different name. For now, Paul Atreides is a student and follower of many adult teachers. What happens when he bests them? Who will he be as Muad'Dib? Safe travels out there, Sandriders. Join us next week as we break down Dune Chapter 2 and meet the villains of our story, the Harkonnens.